Hello, good morning, everyone. Hope you had a good weekend with all that shuffling. All right, maybe you had some good exercise, get you back in shape after a long winter. But here we are for another lesson on the nervous system, part 2. Let me just turn on the caption for anyone who needs it. There we go. All right. Let's review some of the stuff that we learned last week. We're gonna try to wrap this up maybe in the first hour or hour and a half, depending how many questions you have, for example. But let's start with this diagram here on in question 14. Okay, so here we have just a regular brain. And we're looking at the left hemisphere. Hopefully you do recognize that by now. And some of the key features that we talked about include, for example, this central sulcus. Right, which divides the frontal lobe from the parietal lobe, right? So over here, we're just going to go ahead and label that frontal lobe over here. And by now, you should know the frontal lobe is responsible for things like speech, right? Because we have the Broca's area in it, is responsible for voluntary movement because of the primary somatosensory cortex movement. Okay. And then there are the higher order thinking, right? Higher order thinking, like abstract thoughts, doing calculations, all that stuff happens in the frontal lobe. And your personality, that's also in the frontal lobe. So key areas in the frontal lobe that we should remember include the this one right here, right? If you have been coming to class, you probably remember me talking about this many times already. That is the primary motor cortex, responsible for voluntary movement on the other side of the body, right? And it is mapped to different regions of the body, right? You have kind of like the torso up here. The leg would be like on the medial side, inside the longitudinal fissure. You have your face here and your hand here. You don't have to memorize the exact location. I'm just like refreshing your memory, right? So this is located, of course, in the frontal lobe, right here. Since we're looking at the left side of the brain, you will likely find the Broca's area, which is around here. Okay, that's the Broca. Broca's area, right? For speech, right? Okay. Fluent, articulate speech. If you damage that, what do we have? What's the name of the condition that a person gets if they damage the Broca's area? Does anybody remember? Yep, still a little bit earlier. I'll try again later. Broca's aphasia, okay, or expressive aphasia, because the person is not going to be able to express themselves, right? They might be using the wrong word in the wrong context. Their sentence structure is all scrambled, right? And so it's hard for people to understand what they're trying to say. So that's that. All right, next here, behind we have an other lobe right here. That would be the parietal lobe. Parietal lobe. And parietal lobe, the dedicated function is somatosensis, right? Bodily senses, from skin, from muscle. It tells you, what kind of texture you're feeling, pain, temperature, the tension in your muscle, how much the muscle is being stretched as you're lifting heavy things, all these perception, we call it somatosensis. And there is an area here behind the central sulcus, right? This gyrus, this bump here, we call the postcentral gyrus, right? And on that postcentral gyrus, we have the primary somatosensory cortex. Somatosensory cortex, which is for feeling things. Okay, and again, it's mapped just like the primary motor cortex is mapped to different parts of your body. So, just to put the hand here to remind you, and then face. Okay, and again, you have other regions too. Right? I think your mouth is down here, the tongue, lower lips, right? Last time I showed you the picture where the lower lips has a lot of neuron going to it and coming from it, right? Okay, right here we have our occipital lobe. Oh, that's not the color I want. I want the green. There we go. Occipital lobe. And the key function is visual here, right? Visual. And there is, of course, the visual association area in the occipital lobe. And just to refresh your memory, an association area is an area that is found within each lobe that's dedicated for a particular senses, right? So the visual association area is responsible for storing memories related to vision. Okay, so like you recognize a particular symbol, you recognize a person's face, all that visual memory is created and stored in the association area inside the occipital lobe. And last but not least, we have this thing right here. That is, of course, our temporal lobe. Temporal lobe. What kind of senses do we process in the temporal lobe? Anybody remember?
Auditory.
Auditory. That's correct. Thank you, Zia. What else? One more. Now, this is very close to your nose, okay? Like if you have to draw it, like this is where your eyes would be.
Smell and hearing.
Yes, that's right. Smell is the other answer. Thank you, Thashana. That's where your eyeball is going to be, okay? And then your nose is down here. So the nose goes, the smell goes directly right here. Okay, we're gonna come back to that concept later. So auditory and olfactory. Okay, so that's smell. Okay. Eventually, like in lecture 7, we will learn what the fancy name for smell is. Okay, it's olfactory. Auditory is sound. Okay, visual is just vision, of course. Okay, and we have another area here that we need to understand what people are saying, to understand written instruction. That area is right here. Okay. And I'm afraid to ask, but I'm gonna ask, does anybody remember what is the name of that area? What is it called?
Wrinkle. I like.
Yep, it starts with W. That's right. It's a kind of weird name, I guess, but you're right. It's Wernicke's area. Yeah, Wernicke's area. I think it's named after the person again who discovered it. Right. This is not named after the person who discovered it, though. This is named after the person who has the condition, and then the physician named it after, after the person with the bronchosophagia. So this is for understanding, right? Like comprehension. We'll say comprehension of speech and writing. Okay. Now there is a fifth lobe, right? And the fifth lobe is hiding behind the frontal lobe and the temporal lobe. If you pry it open, you will see the insula. Okay? I'll show you the insula later today when we get to lecture 7. Does anybody have any questions, comments before we continue?
Professor, can you just zoom out a bit, please?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
There you go. So you know, don't be afraid to have some cue cards by your side when you are studying all this thing, because just like so many different names, different parts and their functions, right? So it's a good idea to have those cue cards even when you're doing the assessment. Maybe, you know, have a quick reference sheet to help you out. Would be a good idea. Okay, so that's that. I'm just gonna review a little bit more, okay? Because I know you guys were like super busy last week with I'm sure all of your teacher gave you an assessment last week, right after the engagement week, so you probably didn't have much time to go through lecture 6. So it's good for me to probably repeat some of the stuff. Okay, so this is the 3D brain. Of course, we're looking at the right half and we're looking at it from the back. So there we have the cerebellum. Okay, we're going to learn more about the cerebellum right now, but I just want to give you a foreshadowing, okay, a heads up of what it does. Okay, cerebellum does 3 things. Okay, number 1, it helps you maintain balance and equilibrium. Okay, so when we you know, I just took my kids to school this morning. I walked them to school, and there was some like black ice on the sidewalk, and we didn't see it. So we almost slipped. Okay, but then I was able to regain my balance and not fall down. Right, so that's my cerebellum doing the equilibrium and the balance for me, and it's all automatic, right? Like you don't have to have conscious input. It's like reflex, right? As soon as I misstep on the ice and I started slipping, my body automatically help me readjust. So that's the function of the cerebellum. Okay, that's one of them anyways. The other 2 functions has to do with storing motor skills. So things that we do with our hands, like typing, you remember where the keys are, right? That information is stored in the cerebellum. And another function of the cerebellum is to allow you to carry out your voluntary movement smoothly. Okay, so if you wanna like you know, grab a mug or something, you're not gonna be like having shaky hands, right? Like you can steadily hold it, because you know if you move too much, then the content might spill, right? So all that smooth execution of the motion has to do with the cerebellum as well. We'll repeat that later on, okay? But just to plant it in your head. Equilibrium and balance, right? Storing some skill memories, as well as smooth execution of motion. There is the pons here. We didn't talk much about the pons, but pons pretty much is means the bridge, right? Like in French, I think like pontis means bridge or something, and a bridge connects different parts, right? So the bridge here connects different parts of the brain together with a lot of axons going through it, ascending tracks coming up from the spinal cord, descending tracks going down, right? All goes through the pons. Between the pons and the cerebellum, you should recognize that there is the 4th ventricle right here, and it will continue to drain down to the central canal. There is a cerebral aqueduct, and on top of that, you will have the 3rd ventricle. Okay? Of course, the 3rd ventricle is in the midline, And if I delete the third ventricle here, you can see the wall, the side wall of the third ventricle is made up of the thalamus. Okay, so on the right half, if you imagine the room you're in right now, the room you're sitting in right now, assuming you're in a room, okay, the room you're in right now, that whole room is the third ventricle. Okay, so you're sitting in the third ventricle. The wall on your right, that would be the right thalamus, and then the wall on the left, that would be the left thalamus. Can you guys visualize that? Okay, and then the floor is going to be part of the hypothalamus. Hypo means below, right? Okay, so the third ventricle is flanked by the two thalami on each side, and then part of the floor is made up of the hypothalamus. Okay, so as we will see, the thalamus is responsible for sorting the sensory information that's going up to the brain. So your visual information goes through the thalamus, and then it gets projected to the occipital lobe, for example. Okay, if you have information about temperature from the hand, okay, you touch something warm, something cold, it goes up to the thalamus, and then it gets projected to the parietal lobe. Okay, so depending what kind of sensory information is coming up, the thalamus is like a sorting center. Okay, it sends it to the right place. Hypothalamus works closely with the pituitary gland. Okay, in that they would regulate various internal processes to maintain homeostasis, to maintain an internal balance. Okay, so things like body temperature, metabolism, salt and water balance, all that stuff actually is regulated by the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland. We'll learn all about that in lecture 12. The hypothalamus actually is called the master gland of the body because it oversees so many autonomic processes that are vital to our survival. We cannot live without the hypothalamus. Surprisingly, if you damage your pituitary gland, you can still survive, but you would have to be on like a hormonal replacement. Okay, so because a lot of hormones that are missing, you would need to have a supplement for that. More on that later. Okay, what about this band? Anybody remember this this band of white matter here that runs from the front all the way to the back? The name? What's the name of that?
Corpus callosum.
That is correct, Min. That is the corpus callosum, which allows communication between the two hemispheres, right? And right below the corpus callosum, we would be able to see the, we will delete that, we didn't learn that. We will see the lateral ventricle. Okay, I'm just gonna isolate that to remind you it's actually really, really big inside, but we only see a little bit of it, right? Okay. And I think that's pretty much it. That's everything we've learned. Okay, let me see if I can show you the insula, maybe. This is, of course, the frontal lobe. Let's cut that away. Frontal lobe, cut it away. And then that's temporal lobe, cut that away. That's the precentral gyrus. We can cut that away as well. And there is the insula. Okay, it's just hiding behind the frontal lobe and the parietal lobe. And the insula, in case you forgot, that's where process information related to taste is processed. Okay, fancy word for taste is gustatory. We'll learn that today in lecture 7. Anything else that we have here? Like the medulla oblongata is right here, of course. And there is the pineal gland. Okay? It's sometimes called a pineal body. Pineal gland secretes melatonin. Okay, anybody know what melatonin does? Some of you might even take melatonin as supplements. What does melatonin do?
Help sleep.
That's right. That's right. Melatonin helps you go to sleep. When there is a low light setting, then your body starts to make melatonin, and then it will make you sleepy. That's why they say, right, don't look at your phone before you go to bed, because all that stimulation from the bright light is gonna lower your melatonin, and you're gonna have trouble sleeping. That's why they suggest also, if you're gonna have to look at your phone, you turn on the blue light filter, right? Okay, because blue light is the one that's stimulating your body to suppress the melatonin secretion. Okay, and that's also the reason, if you have like one of those old school radio clock that you put on, next to your bed, that the light is red and green. It's never blue, right? Because red and green is shown to not affect the melatonin level. Okay, so like it's not like you look at your clock and you're like, oh, I'm wide awake now. But then, many people don't have that now. People wake up, 3 a.m. in the morning, and then they look at their phone, and then they have trouble going back to sleep, right? Okay, so now that's the reason. Okay. Yeah. Any questions about any of these structures? Anything you want me to elaborate? Otherwise, I'm just gonna go on with the PowerPoint. Everybody happy? Okay, that is that. So back to the good old PowerPoint slides. This is the frontal or coronal section. And just to reorient you one more time, we have the corpus callosum here, and then we have the lateral ventricle, the cross section of it. And this would be the third ventricle. And then you have your thalamus here. Right? This one is your left thalamus, and this is your right thalamus. Right? Over here, corpus callosum. Just gonna put CC. And then this is LV, lateral ventricle. Okay? And in between, third ventricle. When I was studying this, like when I was in school, I found it helpful to look at different diagrams of the brain and just try to identify anything that I could, right? So nowadays well, I mean, we had Google back then as well, but then there wasn't as many image available. But now if you go on, like, just Google brain diagram, okay, or like real brain cross section, then you will get tons and tons of pictures, and it's a good exercise for you to look at those different pictures such as these ones, and then just try to identify as many things as you can. That will help you with your learning for sure. Now, this one is a little bit tricky, but let's see if anybody gets it. Okay, like, what might that be? Okay, what might that be? This part right here. We talked about it a couple times, but are you able to make the connection? What might that be? Yes, Brill, that is the insula. Excellent. Okay, so look, remember the lateral fissure, right? I cannot exit this, because if I exit this, I lose all the writing. Okay, remember I said, like, if you stick your hand into the lateral fissure and then you pry, then you will be able to see the insula. This is the lateral fissure right here. Okay, and that would be like part of the frontal lobe, and that would be part of the temporal lobe. And then if you just, like, stick something in there and pry it open, and then you'll be staring right at the insula, which again is responsible for gustatory information, right? Processing taste. So like I said, just Google a bunch of these things and then identify as many things as you like. And if you're not sure, right, what it is, feel free to send me a picture and then ask me what it is. I'll try to figure it out and tell you. Okay, so this box was just to remind you, like, when you point to it like that, like, it's hard to know if you're pointing at the space in front or at the back panel. The space in front is part of the third ventricle, and the back panel, of course, is the thalamus, right? Okay, so if I ever point to something like that, you know, that oval shape with the eye, right, in the middle, if I ever point to that on a test or something like that, know that I'm always referring to the thalamus and not the third ventricle. Okay, moving on. That's just a diagram with all the stuff that we already know. Not going to go through it again. So what does the thalamus do? Well, earlier I told you, right? Thalamus is like the sorting center. Okay, its function is to take the sensory information and relay them to different parts of the brain. Okay, so all the sensory information except for smell will go through the thalamus. Okay, smell will go directly to the temporal lobe with no filtering. Okay, everything else, your thalamus will help you sort it out. Not only does it decide where they should go, but it also decides whether it's relevant information at that specific moment. Right? We cannot process everything that is that our senses pick up. Right? We would have sensory overload. Right? There would be too much background noises. Right? Imagine like your email filter doesn't work. Right? So all the important emails are gonna get buried with all the junk emails, right? Okay, so it's not a very efficient way of dealing with things. So same thing with our senses. If we process all the information that are coming in, right, we would get overload. We wouldn't know what's important and what's not, and we would have a hard time concentrating. So there's a video on YouTube. I don't know if you've seen this before. It's gonna force us to, yeah, we have to watch a commercial. Unfortunately, we'll see. Who's that? Kelly Clarkson or something? Yeah. Okay, we skip that. Okay, so here is a video. Let me see if I can turn on the sound. I have trouble doing that before. Share sound. Okay. You might have seen this before. You might not have. Doesn't matter. Okay, it's a short clip, and it will illustrate a point.
The monkey business illusion. Count how many times the
Can you guys hear the sound? I just want to make sure.
Yep.
Oh, excellent. Thank you.
players wearing white pass the ball.
Okay, so just to reiterate, it's asking you to count how many times the players wearing white pass the ball. Okay, so go ahead.
The correct answer is 16 passes. Did you spot the gorilla? For people who haven't seen or heard about a video like this before, about half missed the gorilla. If you knew about the gorilla, you probably saw it, but did you notice the curtain changing color or the player on the black team leaving the game? Let's rewind and watch it again. Here comes the gorilla, and there goes a player, and the curtain is changing from red to gold.
Okay, so that's what I wanted to show you. How many of you have? I guess it's hard for me to see. In class, usually people could put up their hand and let me see. But did you guys see anybody seen this something like this before? And if you haven't, you know, I'm not sure if you guys saw the gorilla. But this is a perfect illustration of what your thalamus does for you. Okay, because the question, sorry, the beginning of the video, they're like, oh, count how many times the player wearing white passed the ball. So you fixated on a particular task, okay, and subconsciously your brain is like, okay, that I need to count, so I need to focus on the ball being passed, and then you filter out everything else, right, that you're not looking for. Okay, the gorilla came in, you didn't see that because you're so focusing on something. And that's basically what the thalamus does for you, right? And it's very important, right? Useful. Think about studying at the library or the cafeteria, right? When you're so focused, you want to zone out things, like background noise, people chatting in the background, you know, that will help you focus as well, right? Okay, so I hope that was an interesting clip for you if you haven't seen it. Usually in class, like if I'm teaching this in class, I like to you know, all of a sudden hide behind the podium, and now I always ask the class, right? Anybody know what is the color of my belt? And then nobody would be able to answer, which is a good thing. I'd be a little bit concerned if people are focusing too much on the color of my belt. But that is another point, right? You've been looking at the teacher like me for the whole class, okay? But hopefully you're focusing on the stuff that he's teaching, and everything else is just background information. It's just noise for your brain, and you know it filters all that information out. Okay. Well, thank you for the feedback in the chat. I'm glad some of you miss some of the stuff, and you know it served as illustrating a point. Okay, so that's what the thalamus for. All the senses goes through it except for smell. Okay, except for smell. Now you probably eventually, right, even if you don't have a question now, later on when you're studying stuff, then you might realize something. You might like, but hold on a second. Sometimes you go into a room and then you notice like someone's perfume, okay, or someone's cologne or something, okay, but after a while you don't pick that scent up anymore, right? So how is that possible if smell does not go through the thalamus? Well, that's another mechanism, okay. You get your body get used to a particular signal if it gets sent repeatedly, okay, such as the smell of the cologne or the perfume. Okay, if you keep on sending it, then eventually the neurons that picks up that signal gets numb. Okay, and you don't really pick it up anymore. Okay, so that's different from the thalamus, because it's not like you keep on seeing the gorilla and all of a sudden you don't see it anymore, right? Okay, the thalamus is you filter out the information right from the start. Okay, and then because it wasn't important at that moment, right? Whereas the case with the smell is you pick it up initially and then the intensity dampens. Okay, so I have a private message that asks, what about photographic memory? Yeah, so some people actually can pick things up passively. Without deliberate effort, okay, and for some reason it might have to do with the thalamus. I'm not so sure. Maybe like all the information just get transferred to like long-term memory by skipping short-term memory, and then that creates the photographic memory. I'm not quite sure it has something to do with the thalamus, but I do know there is another condition, forgot what it was called, where people are not able to filter as much, okay, and then they get distracted easily. Okay, they have hard time focusing, right? And of course that could interfere with daily lives. Anyway, that's the thalamus. Basically, it filters information, okay, sensory information, except for smell. Next, we have the hypothalamus. I talked about hypothalamus already. It forms the floor of the third ventricle, works closely with the pituitary gland, which is kind of dangle below it, right? Okay, and they help maintain homeostasis through hormones, okay? If you need to have some examples of what kind of homeostasis, so like, you know, water balance, okay? Believe it or not, when you are sleeping at night, the hypothalamus actually secretes a hormone that helps you not to go pee, okay? So it conserves water for you because you're not drinking, right? So your body needs to maintain that water for hydration. That comes from the hypothalamus. Metabolism, right? Just to name a few, right? Body temperature. So all these are going to be regulated through hormone. You're gonna hate me when we get to lecture 12 when we learn all the hormones. There are like 24 of them in total, and yeah, we're gonna have fun. You're gonna have fun memorizing it. So that's that. Brainstem. Okay, so we're moving further down now. Okay, so the brainstem has three parts. The midbrain, right, which is right here, the pons, the bridge, right, and the medulla oblongata. Now, we're not going to spend too much time on these things because a lot of the functions are actually overlapping, and they seems to have reflex center in them, as well as you see all these like little lines that are coming out. Those lines are actually cranial nerves. Okay? So remember, we have 12 pairs of cranial nerves that are coming out directly from the brain. Okay? So some of them actually originates from the midbrain, from the pons, and from the medulla oblongata. So very in a very condensed explanation, the midbrain and the pons act as relay station for tracks passing between the cerebellum and the spinal cord, and cerebrum, spinal cord, and cerebellum. Basically, tracks are bundles of axons, right? So you have all these tracks coming up from the spinal cord, going down to the spinal cord. All these tracks will pass through these structures, and some of them might branch and go to different parts of the brain. Okay, and they contain reflex center for visual, auditory, and tactile responses. Well, what does it mean? Well, visual reflex would be like, you see a flash of light all of a sudden outside the window. You cannot help but to turn and look, right? That's an example of visual reflex. A bright light shining at your face, you would instinctively coil and close your eyes and block it. That's a visual reflex. Auditory, same thing. Instead of bright light, you have a loud noise. Okay, like a loud bang that happens, right? And then everybody would look. Again, in class, what I like to do is this, right? Because in a classroom, you notice maybe on a good day, maybe like 40 to 50% of the students are actually listening to what I'm saying. The other people either are just like, pseudo listening, right? Not really listening in their own world or something, or have their head down. So what I like to do is when I get to this slide, right, without warning, I would slam the table really hard, like bang, and all of a sudden, like everybody jump and look, right? And I was like, see, that's an example of auditory reflex. You hear a loud sound, you couldn't help but to become startled and look up, right? And that kind of reflex happens in the midbrain and the pons. And then the tactile response, right? Same concept, but with touch now. Okay, you touch something sharp, your hand let go, right? Sure, part of it is processed with the spinal reflex, but then it could also go up to the midbrain and the pons, depending on the kind of stimulus, right? It's not just sharp object or a hot or like a hot surface, right? It could be other kind of touch as well. Like you touch something gross, right? Ugh, you have that recoil, that reflex. Okay, midbrain and pons. Yeah, that's all we're going to talk about for midbrain and pons. Okay, they have reflex centers, and then they have multiple tracks going through them. Medulla oblongata, we know that is the lowest part of the brain, and as soon as it exits the skull, you have a big hole at the bottom of the skull for the medulla oblongata to come out, and then it transitions into the spinal cord, right? We know that it controls a breathing rhythm because there is a respiratory center there, but actually it does play a role in controlling heartbeat strength as well, right? So heartbeat strength is what we call the it's going to affect the stroke volume, right? How hard the heart squeezes will determine how much blood comes out of it, right? And that will control things like cardiac output. Everything is kind of related. There are more reflex centers in the medulla oblongata, right? Swallowing reflex, right? Like a baby, nobody taught a baby how to swallow, but they know how to do that instinctively, right? Reflex centers in the medulla oblongata allows that to happen. Coughing reflex, vomiting reflex, sneezing reflex. Okay, so cough syrup targets the coughing center in the medulla oblongata, and it helps dampen it, suppress the coughing. And some coughing syrups are they contain codeine, which is an opioid, right? And of course, now we have like a opioid crisis. things like fentanyl. These are much stronger types of opioid, which also acts on the medulla oblongata. But they do more than suppressing the coughing. They actually suppress your breathing as well, and that's how overdose of fentanyl can cause death, right? By slowly decreasing your breathing rate, and then you stop breathing altogether. Okay. One last thing: 90% of the tracks cross the midline, in the middle, right, of the at the medulla oblongata. Remember all those ascending tracks, the blue lines that I love to draw, right? Comes up and then it crosses the center before heading up further to your cerebrum. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna go back to here to show you, right? So this is the diagram, right? Like you can go back to it if you want, or you can just listen. So the ascending track, right, which is at the back of the spinal cord, right, goes up and then it crosses the midline at the medulla oblongata. Oh, it says here already, medulla oblongata. And then actually before going up to the primary somatosensory cortex, there is an other stop here. Okay, I'm gonna put an other stop here. Do you know what that extra stop is? Oh, come on, the color is not working. I have a feeling it's gonna crash soon. Okay, there we go. What is that structure that it must go through? We just learned it today before going up further. What might that be? That's quite all right. That is the thalamus. Okay, remember, thalamus has to filter the information, right? Is it worth sending up to the cortex? Okay, and if it is worth sending up to the cerebral cortex, which cortex are we going to? Are we going to the frontal lobe? Are we going to the parietal lobe, occipital lobe? Where do we send it? Right. So that is the thalamus. So just an extra stop, right, on the way up. Any question? All right, very good. I don't know what's going on, but like my computer is very sluggish right now. If it crashes, if I'm gone, just come back to the Zoom. Okay, I'll make it back eventually. All right, don't go away. Okay, we have another structure here called the reticular formation. The reticular formation is a web of gray matter that kind of continuously send sensory signals to all the parts of the cerebrum, and it uses these sensory stimuli to keep us mentally alert. Okay, and even when we are sleeping, the reticular formation is kind of quietly functioning in the background, so it can wake us up if there is any kind of sudden noise or sudden bright light or something like that, and you'll be able to wake up from it. Okay, and if someone damages the reticular formation, then they might not be able to wake up, and they slip into a coma. Okay, so basically, the reticular formation, while we are awake, it keeps us mentally alert. Okay, when we're sleeping, it serves as like a system that's running in the background to help wake us up. Okay, when we need to. But like many parts of the brain, it's able to get accustomed to a certain trigger. Okay, so I'll give you another example. When I got married, we got a house that was next to the GO train station. Okay, and you know, if you live next to a GO train station, you will know they like to blow the horn every time they pass through the rail crossing. Okay, and so like every morning, like 5:30, that's when the first train comes through, I guess. Then they would blow the horn, and then we would wake up, right, to the sound of the horn. Okay, and then, you know, we'd be so frustrated. It's like, oh no, we're gonna be stuck here for the rest of our lives, right, with the horn blowing, and then, you know, we were sleep deprived, right? But then eventually, after like, you know, a month or so, like we weren't as bothered by it anymore. And in fact, eventually we stopped hearing it altogether. Okay, so that's like our reticular formation starting to get used to certain type of stimulus, and then we realize, oh, those kind of sound is not something cause for alarm. Okay, it's not something that's urgent. It's not like there's a fire alarm going off and then we got to wake up and get out of the house, right? Eventually our brain learns to recognize that sound as just something that happens every day. It's not important. Okay, train that's going to run into your house. Okay, you can continue sleeping. There's no need to wake up from it, right? So it does get trained to certain stimulus. Okay, and that is the reticular formation. Okay, moving on, we have the cerebellum. Cerebellum is at the back. Okay, and this is the actual color, right? Kind of beige, brownish. We got the pons right here. We got a medulla oblongata here. Of course, you can see the fourth ventricle here, right? All the goodies. So the cerebellum is not too big, about the size of a decent plum, right? Or like the size of your fist, and it just sits right there at the back, and it's densely packed with neurons. Okay? It has more neuronal connections in the cerebellum alone compared to the rest of the brain combined. Okay? So what does it do? Well, first one is maintain balance and posture, right? Equilibrium. I already told you that. It receives sensory input from the eyes, from the ears, from joints and muscle about the present position of body parts. You see, your cerebellum has this reference picture of what your body should look like when you are doing certain things. Okay, so assuming you guys are all sitting at home right now watching me talk about this stuff, then your cerebellum is like, the person is sitting, and sitting should look like this. Okay, so if let's say someone comes up to you, sneak up behind you, and then pull the chair from below, right? Then immediately you started falling, and your cerebellum is like, hold on a minute, sitting is supposed to look like that, and not like that, for example. And as soon as the actual body position is different from the expected position, then the cerebellum will start to adjust the body parts, shift away, move your hands to try to put you back to that expected position. Do you understand what I mean? Right? So like you could be walking and walking, like this morning, I was walking, and then all of a sudden I started slipping, right? And as soon as I slip, then my cerebellum is like, oh, this is not what walking should look like. Okay, your head should not be like way behind your back. Okay, and then my body automatically shifts the weight and move the hands and everything, try to balance out until I stand back up to the reference position, right? And then the cerebellum is like, oh, okay, now we're back to the equilibrium. Everything is good, right? Of course, it's not a perfect system, right? We all do fall eventually at some point in our lives. So it tries best to regain the posture, but it's not always going to be successful. So that is the cerebellum, first function of it. So people who damage their cerebellum, they would be walking around as though they are drunk. That's how the physician would describe it. Okay, because there's just like very little equilibrium and balance that are going on. Okay, and here's another funny fact. To maintain balance, you actually need to have visual input from eyes and actually from ears as well. Okay, you probably can stand on one foot for a very long time. Okay, no problem, right? But you should try to do that with your eyes closed. Right? If you've never done that before, you would close your eyes and then put your one leg up, and then within 10 or 15 seconds you will lose your balance, much shorter than what you would be able to do with your eyes open. Right? So without visual input, your cerebellum is missing one key piece of information that's vital for maintaining balance. Okay. Did you also know you cannot walk in a straight line if you blindfold, right? And plug your ears? And try to do this, in an open field in the summer or something. Okay, just blindfold, your friend, okay, plug their ears and tell them to walk in a straight line. Okay, they in the beginning it's okay. The first leg, 10, 20 steps, no problem. And then they will start to veer off in one direction. And then sometimes if you do that long enough, they end up walking in circles without realizing it. Okay, so to maintain the balance and posture and stay on the track, it's not just the cerebellum. Okay, you need all these input, right, from eyes, from ears, from joints and muscle. Next one is coordinate muscle movement. If you think about this person, this basketball player trying to do like a layup, okay, just to dribble the ball and then keeping the eyes on the rim and eventually jumping and putting the ball in the hoop. All that requires coordination of your muscle. Okay, different muscles, right? Not just your hand dribbling ball, but then your feet, when to jump, right? If you jump too early, you're gonna miss the ring. If you jump too late, you're gonna miss it. You just have to jump at the right location, right? And all that coordination that ensure like a smooth execution of your voluntary movement, that requires the cerebellum. Okay, the actual movement originates from the primary motor cortex in the frontal lobe, but to make sure that you're able to carry it out in a smooth, coordinated fashion, that requires your cerebellum. Last but not least, it's the location where you store skill memories. Okay, so skill memories are different from what we call decorative memory. We'll learn that later. Okay, decorative memory is like memorizing the stuff in this course. Okay, that stuff, if you don't rehearse, you're gonna forget. Okay, but skill memory, once you've learned it, you will basically have it for life. Okay, so like typing, right? You remember how to type even if you haven't typed for like a whole week. Okay, in fact, you can type with your eyes closed. Okay, it's so ingrained, the position of all the keys is so ingrained in your cerebellum that you don't even have to look. You can just type as if the keyboard is part of you, right? Unless it's a different keyboard, right? Then you have to relearn it. You have to retrain your fingers, because sometimes like in another keyboard, like even if you're so used to using your laptop and then you use one at the school, like the backspace is like all the way out at the top right, then you have to stretch a little bit further, right? So you got to retrain your cerebellum for that. Riding a bike, right? If you haven't ride your bike for like 10 years, no problem. You pick up bike, you would be able to ride it almost within the first 5 minutes. I mean, it takes a few minutes to get adjusted to it. Like I haven't skated for let me see, like 15 years, I would say 15 years. Okay, and then a couple of weeks ago, like I took my kids to skate at a nearby ring, and I got back onto ice for the first time in 15 years, right? I mean, I fell like 2-3 times at the beginning, but afterwards I was able to skate again, right? Like my cerebellum store that muscle memory, okay? The ability to balance, to shift my weight on the ice, right? So these are the things that you don't remember, you don't forget once you've learned it. Playing video games as well. I don't know if any of you play video games, but like there are certain buttons that you press, sequences of buttons that you press to execute certain moves, right, in the video games. And once you learn them, again, it stores in your cerebellum. Okay, so maintaining balance and posture, coordinating muscle movement, and store skill memory. Okay, next we're going to learn about the limbic system. The limbic system is one of the most primitive part of the brain. Okay, it relates to survival and instinctive behaviors. Okay, and the limbic system plays a role in a reward system for the brain. Okay, so when you do things that makes you feel good, okay, then it releases things like dopamine, and it tells you that oh, this is a good thing for the body. Okay, this is something that makes me happy, and you want to crave to do it again in the future. Okay, so what are some of the things that that you do that makes you feel good, that makes you feel happy? Anybody want to share? Usually people tell me eating. Okay, yeah, eating is good. Yeah, see there. Okay, almost as if on prom, right? Someone types eating in chat. Yeah, eating. I love eating too, right? And that's a good answer, because when we were like still living in caves, so to speak, like our ancestors, right, living in caves, eating makes them feel good, nourishes the body, and then food was scarce. It's not something that is readily available, and so that urge to want to eat again is what drives them to go forage for food, right, to hunt for food, right, despite of the dangers associated with these activities. Okay, like they actually have to, like, I don't know, kill some animals to actually eat them, right? And the animal can fight back in some cases. So it's related to survival, right? The weighing the reward versus the risk, that's part of the limbic system. But nowadays in modern life, like food is generally not a problem for people living in developed countries, for example. And so the limbic system start to ledge on other things that people could get addicted to. Okay, so other things that might make a person feel good and they want to do it again could be things like smoking. Okay, drinking alcohol, and it doesn't have to be a physical substance, right? Okay, it could be things like playing video games, could be gambling, right? All these things. When it makes the person feel good, the limbic system lights up, and then they crave for it. They want to do it again. Okay? But it's not all negative, right? Like Juman said, exercise, right? Exercise. Some people like to exercise and give them that dopamine release, and they feel happy and they want to do it again, right? And so that's all part of the limbic system. Now, what kind of brain parts is in the limbic system? We have the hippocampus, hypothalamus, amygdala, and thalamus. So to remember this, you remember like a hippopotamus wearing a hat, okay? Hippo and then HAT. So hippocampus, it's a structure that's deep in the brain, which stores memory. Okay, it's responsible for storing long-term memory. So these are not like skill memories that we were talking about, right? Those are stored in the cerebellum at the back. These are memories related to factual stuff. Okay, remembering someone, right, in your life, remembering your phone number, remembering an event, right? Remembering an experience that you have, good or bad, right? That's stored in the hippocampus. Okay, long-term memory. The hypothalamus we already learned, and that usually will release some kind of hormone to charge that memory. Okay, especially if it's something that puts you in danger. The hypothalamus would trigger the release of some stress hormone to help you remember it. I'll give you an example later on. Amygdala. Okay, amygdala, that's how you pronounce it. You can change the Y to an I and then sound it out. Okay, amygdala is responsible for emotion. Okay, things that makes you feel happy, you want to do it again. Things that makes you feel angry, scared, you want to avoid. You don't want to do it again in the future, right? So again, this risk and reward situation. So think about like our ancestor. Maybe one day they went out and hunt for meat. Okay, and then I don't know, I'm just totally making this up, okay, and they try to hunt down this tiger or something, and then the tiger fight back and then gave you a nasty claw in the arm, and then you got injured, but luckily the person survived. And then so next time they see the tiger, they're like, oh, okay, even though there's meat there, food, but it fights back, that's the risk. And last time I got hurt, I probably should leave that alone. Okay, maybe I should go hunt the deer or something. Okay. Now, as far-fetched as that sounds, right, when we imagine our ancestor doing that, right, animals nowadays actually do that as well. Okay, they have a limbic system in their system, and they know what to hunt for. Okay, like they're not gonna if you watch anything on the Discovery Channel or like just on YouTube in general, if you look at a pack of a lion or whatever, they don't go for the big buffaloes, right? They go for the babies, right? Because the big buffaloes could kick them and hurt them, right? So risk and reward. The limbic system is judging that. Okay, and the thalamus will help process the memories. Okay, what memories should we store? What's important? What's important for survival? Okay, so that's the limbic system. Okay, the HAT, a hippo wearing a hat. That's how I remember it. This is just to show you where the hippocampus is. So that's the thalamus, that's the corpus callosum. So if you trace the corpus callosum all the way to the back, and then you go a little bit down, that's where the hippocampus is going to be, and then there is going to be your amygdala. I'm not going to ask you the location of these things, but just to show you, okay, in case you're wondering. Types of memories are stored differently. Okay, I already told you about skill memory, repetition of motor tasks. They are stored in cerebellum, and then they don't go away. The decorative memory are facts and impressions, and they are stored in the hippocampus for long-term memory, but they are screened by the amygdala. Okay, what do I mean by that? Does any of you remember what you had for dinner last Monday? Anybody wanna? If you remember, please please share. Please tell me what you have for dinner. Anybody remember?
I can't remember.
You cannot remember. Eh? Yeah, me either. Okay, I can't even remember what I ate like 2 days ago. Okay, and I assume that's the general situation here. Okay, that's why I said if you remember, please tell me. I would want to know why you remember, right, and how you remember. Seriously though, anybody remember at all? Like you don't have to tell me what you eat, okay? But if you remember, maybe you can let me know that you remember. No? Okay. Here's another question. Anybody remember what they had for dinner on their last birthday? Some of you might remember, right? Okay. So what's the difference? Well, maybe last Monday was just like any other Monday. For most of us, it was. Okay. Like, oh, I went to Vincent's class in the morning, and then I had, maybe chemistry or math in the afternoon, and then we had dinner, and that was it. Okay. Like it wasn't anything special. So your amygdala did not generate any special emotion associated with that event. And then it's like, this is not worth remembering. And then it gets deleted. Okay. It's not worth storing in the hippocampus. But, if it was your last birthday and you did something special or with someone special, you will remember it because the amygdala is like, oh, that was so nice, to be with friends, to be with family, right? And, we had that dinner and it was very nice. The food was great. Atmosphere was amazing. And then, I cherish this memory. I want to remember it. So it will be in your hippocampus. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah. So things that has an emotional attachment to it, right? Especially like a pleasant one or very negative one, is going to stick in your mind. Okay. Same thing. You went to a restaurant some time ago and you have like a severe food poisoning from it. You would likely remember, oh, that time I went to that place and I ordered this, whatever, and it made me so sick. I don't want to ever eat that kind of dish again, right? So that's an emotionally charged event, and it's more likely you would remember it. That's why it's so hard to study in general. Okay, to memorize like the things I'm teaching you, to memorize things that you learn in math, all the formulas, chemistry, and all that stuff. It's generally hard. Like that's why I try to tell you stories, right? And try to keep it interesting to elicit emotions in you to help you remember it. Because things that are like boring, things that have no meaning to you, and you're like, oh, why am I learning this, right? What's the point? Your body will naturally filter it out, right? You would have a very hard time storing it in the hippocampus, right? So, that's why I try to give you those stories. You're like, oh, reticular formation. Oh yeah, he was talking about his house, with the loud GO train going through, wakes him up. Oh, okay. Reticular formation wakes you up when you're sleeping, right? So you can create your own story too, to try to make meaning to the things that you're learning, and it would help you remember them a little bit better. Or you can just memorize them and do it the normal hard way. Anyway, so that's the hippocampus storing the decorative memory. And don't forget skill memories, that's the cerebellum. Okay, cerebellum. Okay, let's do this question. Okay, thank you for those of you who participated. The correct answer is the corpus callosum, bundle of white matter that communicates between the two hemisphere. Thalamus is gray matter because it needs to do process information, right? It needs to determine what goes through and what not, and where things go, right? Anytime you need to do some kind of information processing, you need to have the gray matter. Cerebral cortex means the outside of the cerebrum, that is gray, and the butterfly, the center of the spinal cord, that is also gray as well. Here is another question. I talked about this multiple times already. Let's see if you remember. Okay, not bad. Get my usual 5 responses. That is the fourth ventricle. Get the little triangle thing, right? Okay, that you see in the diagrams. Just quickly show you right here, right? That little triangle. That is the fourth ventricle. Okay, between the pons and the cerebellum. Let me see. There is another one right here. Long-term memory are stored in the. I'm just gonna tell you this one. Okay, hippocampus. We just did that. You should remember hippocampus. And damage to the indicator area will affect what? So you will get some of these questions like on the test later on, right? Like with just a brain, and I point to certain parts and then I ask you, what happens if this is damaged? Or what happens if this one is malfunctioning? Okay, and that is the cerebellum. So the answer is balance. Okay, cerebellum, balance. The occipital lobe is up here, so that's what the vision is. Okay? For the person who chose vision, you probably confuse cerebellum with the occipital lobe, but that's okay. Now you would know. Okay, another one here. Good, that is the amygdala. Everyone who answered got it right. I think the most important thing for you to do in this lecture is the first thing you should do is to just write out all the brain parts that we've learned, okay, and all the lobes, and then have like a really short 1-sentence description of what it does. Okay, and then you just memorize that first. That should be your first basic thing to do. Okay, and then you start moving on to remembering additional functions, connections with other parts. Okay, but very basic bare minimum is to, when you see hippocampus, immediately you should think about, oh, long-term memory. Okay, thalamus, relay station, right? Sort and filter information. Cerebellum, posture and balance, skill memory, okay? Smooth execution of movement, right? So you should have these keywords that you memorize that are associated with each of the parts. Okay, that's it for lecture 6. I do want to do one of these application questions just to, really connect everything for you. But we should take a break first. All right, we'll continue in 5 minutes. See you at 9:45. Okay. let's keep going. Let's take a look at this question here. You are walking to class, pondering the intricacies of physiology when you trip over an uneven place in the sidewalk and fall. Unhurt but embarrassed and angry, you jump up and glance around to see if anyone is watching. From your knowledge of neuroanatomy and function, explain how the following areas of the brain might be involved in this scenario. Okay, so we have the cerebrum here, we have the cerebellum, and we have the limbic system. Okay, so let's write out some of the things that would be happening in these areas. So let's start with the cerebrum. Okay, so what's going on with the cerebrum? Well, the cerebrum in this particular case would be responsible for the conscious perception of various sensory input. Okay, so for example, from eyes, okay, you can see yourself falling. Okay, you can see the pavement coming up to your face. Okay, there is the somatosensis. Okay, as you're falling, right, your muscle tension is loosening in the leg because it's no longer supporting your weight. Okay, and that decrease in tension, it's going to get sent to the parietal lobe. Okay, and voluntary movement. Is important, right? Because now you're falling, right? It's imminent that you're gonna hit the floor, so your hand might stick out and try to, protect yourself, right? So that you're not gonna actually hit your face. Okay. Yeah, I like that one as well. Brill said when you look around to see who's watching after you got back up, right? So looking around to see who's watching. Okay. Getting back up. Right. Brushing yourself off. Okay. After we fell, right? We get up and then we do this, right? Well, try to clean ourselves up, right? Brushing ourselves off. That's the cerebrum. Okay. Maybe another one here. Sorry, it's very unorganized. I'm just writing them out as it comes to my mind. Okay, feeling the pain. Feeling the pain. Okay. Maybe you scrape a knee. Maybe you scrape your palm as you land. Okay. You bone eggs a little bit. Okay. So all that is gonna involve the cerebrum. Okay. What about cerebellum? Cerebellum here. Do you guys want to help me out here with the cerebellum? Should be pretty straightforward.
Getting back the balance.
Yeah. Okay. So like you will try to, as you fall, as you're falling, it will try to regain balance. As you trip, right? I guess in this case. But fail in this particular scenario. Okay? You try to regain the balance, but you can't, and then brace for impact. That's cerebellum. Okay, and ensure smooth execution, smooth recovery. You can say smooth recovery as you stand up. Remember, the actual act of standing up, that comes from the primary motor cortex. But to make sure that you actually stand up with no problem, right? That's the cerebellum. Excuse me. When you stretch your arms to minimize the fall by reflexes, that's the cerebellum. Yeah, that's part of actually regaining the balance as well, right? Like stretching your arms and but probably also the cerebrum as well. It's not really one thing or the other, right? A lot of time there's like crosstalk between different parts. So yeah, that's good. Also the cerebellum. Remember, cerebellum has this reference image of what you're supposed to be looking like, what your body's supposed to look like when you're doing certain things, right? So as you're falling, the cerebellum will be receiving signals from, we'll learn this next part today, okay? But I'll write down the name, vestibule. And from vestibule, which is part of the inner ear, as you fall, okay? So there's a part in the inner ear called the vestibule that detects acceleration, okay? So falling is a type of acceleration, okay? Like in a car, when you step on the accelerator and speeding up and cause your head to go back, that's another kind of acceleration, okay? So that sends signals to the cerebellum. Okay? And then the cerebellum is like, oh no, we're falling. Okay, we try to recover, try to regain balance, but it failed in this case, and boom, you hit the pavement. All right, limbic system here. Let's see if you've learned anything from me about the limbic system. The limbic system is the reward system, risk and reward. So how is the limbic system important in this case? Anybody? Come on, don't make me do all the hard work. Bruce says yes, anger. And which part of the limbic system would that be, bro?
Amygdala.
The amygdala, that's right. So the amygdala triggers feeling of embarrassment and anger. Okay. Now, if you curse a few times, you fell down and then you're like beep beep beep. You curse a few times. That would be the cerebellum. Okay, motor speech, right? Broca's area. When you swear, you got to make sure that the syntax of your swearing words are in the right place. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense. And then that feeling of embarrassment, that anger, that is the limbic system. What else? What else in the limbic system, huh? In this case. Okay, remember, right? I told you, right? I almost slipped and fell this morning, right? So guess what? When I pick up my kids later today, I'll be like, oh, I remember I almost slipped there this morning. So when I approach that place, I remember the negative feeling, okay, of slipping. So I will watch out for it. I will avoid that place, right? I have a memory of it, right? So that's what the limbic system will do in this case as well. You're like, oh, okay, maybe that part of the road is under construction or something, right? So next time I should avoid. So create memory of this unpleasant experience. Okay. So next time, pay attention or avoid that path or something. Okay. Now don't forget there's also the hippocampus, sorry, the what is it? The hypothalamus, right? So you might trigger the release of things like adrenaline. Okay, feel your heart pumping, right? Shortness of breath a little bit. That's going to be the hormones, and hormones is regulated by hypothalamus, right? Okay. So I hope this example kind of illustrates how all the different parts actually functions in that split second. Look, it doesn't take too long to fall. Like if you're just walking on the sidewalk, right? Okay, like the falling itself only happens what, 2-3 seconds, maybe tops 5 seconds if you like the slow motion fall, right? But in that brief moment, all these things happen from all these different parts of the brain, and they are communicating with each other, right? So this would be an excellent question on a written paper, right? This something like this, easily like 5-6 marks. Ask you to write out the answer. Fortunately, there is no written response on the online test. So if you don't like writing, then that's an advantage. Okay, that's it for lecture 6. Any when kids cry about it, is it the amygdala? Yeah. But also the frontal lobe, since you asked, right? The frontal lobe, of the many things that it does, one of the key function is suppression of behaviors that are inappropriate in certain contexts. Okay, so we don't develop that until around the teenage years, and that's why kids, like if I bring my kids to class and then they sit there, tops 10 minutes, they would lose it. They were like, oh, this is so boring. Can we go? Are we done? What's going on, right? So they don't have that suppression, right? To hold on to their feelings, and because it's inappropriate to say something like that in the context, right? A lot of students probably share the same sentiment as my kids, like, oh, are you done yet? Like, why are you still talking about the brain, right? But it's inappropriate to say that in front of your teacher in the class. Okay, so your frontal lobe helps suppress that behavior. Okay, so same thing with kids crying, right? Okay, whining about certain things. Okay, they just don't have that ability to control their emotions just yet. Okay, even adults, right? Some adults, they are more prone to doing certain inappropriate things in certain environments, right? Okay, so you would expect their frontal lobe to suppress those kind of things, but they don't. Okay, so one example is something called Tourette syndrome, right? Anybody heard of that before? Tourette syndrome. Okay, so these adults who have damaged part of the frontal lobe, and they have no control of physically suppressing some of these so-called inappropriate behavior, and then they actually have these episodes which is called tics that goes off every now and then. Okay, and they would just say all these things that are inappropriate in public. Okay, like maybe swearing, calling people inappropriate things, and they literally have no control about it. And so sometimes they may wear a t-shirt that says, oh, sorry, I have Tourette syndrome. Okay, to kind of so that people would know. But in generally, people might not even heard about those kind of conditions. Okay, but nevertheless, is a way to educate the public about it. Okay, so it just shows how important the frontal lobe is. Sorry, that's a very long explanation for your question, but hopefully it does answer it. So are we good to go now with lecture 6? Do you guys have anything else you want to ask before we move on to 7? Well, if you think of anything later on, you know where to find me. All right, let's move on to lecture 7 now. I just need to find my PowerPoint. There it is. So lecture 7, special senses. We have 5 senses in general. vision, hearing, smell, taste, touch, and then we know these goes to different parts of the brain now. We just learned it. Right? Vision goes to the back, occipital lobe. Hearing and smell, that goes to the temporal lobe. Taste goes to insula, and touch goes to the parietal lobe. Okay, so those are the 5 senses, and the lecture will focus primarily on vision and hearing, the eyes and the ears. Okay. These we'll just briefly talk about, but the focus is on these 2. These are pictures of the receptors that are responsible for picking up those particular senses. Remember, like when was it? Like lecture 5, maybe we had that drawing. Okay, you have like these sensory receptor in the skin, and then you have the sensory neuron taking it to the brain, interneuron in the CNS, and then you have the motor neuron coming out, right? So at the beginning, you need to have some kind of sensory receptor to detect that change, right? And that's what the sensory receptor looks like for different types of senses. So we have these cone cells and rod cells for vision. We have the hair cells for hearing. Okay, we have these olfactory bulbs for smell. We have taste bud for taste embedded in our tongue, and for touch we have these different sensors for different things, for temperature, for pressure, that are embedded within our skin. So let's start with a general senses. When a sensory receptor is stimulated, it generates action potential in the sensory neurons. Okay, so the sensory neuron is really, really long. It takes the information towards your CNS, where it is going to be processed. And as for the sensory receptor, each receptor is only going to respond to a particular type of stimulus. The cones and the rods are only going to respond to light. The hair cells are only going to respond to pressure, for example. So here is a list of, I think, 6 sensory receptors. First type is mechanoreceptors. Okay? So mechanoreceptors are stimulated by changes in pressure. So the most straightforward example would be, poking you with the sharp end of a pen versus the blunt end of the pen. It feels different, right? One is sharper than the other end, and that's gonna create different pressure on your skin, and the mechanoreceptors are able to detect that. Okay, you can detect the difference between a bug crawling on your skin versus like a spoon scraping your skin, right? That's different pressure, and it's detected by mechanoreceptors. You also have so these are mechanoreceptors in the skin. Okay, so in skin, for example. You also have mechanoreceptors in the inner ear. Right? Earlier we talked about the vestibule, which detects acceleration. But you also have mechanoreceptors that detects body movement, like, rotating from side to side, right? Nodding your head. You have these mechanoreceptors in the inner ear that would detect that. Okay, so they either respond to changes in pressure or body movement. Thermal receptors are pretty self-explanatory. They are stimulated by temperature change, and it could be like outside temperature, which you would feel with your skin, but you also have thermal receptors on the inside to feel it as well. If you drink something cold, you would feel it go down your esophagus, right? Same thing with something hot, right? So the fact that you can feel the temperature in the esophagus tells you that you have thermal receptors inside as well. Okay, so located in skin as well as internal organs. I don't know if you ever had an IV hooked up to you. Hopefully not, right? But if you ever had an IV hooked up to you, one time I got like hospitalized, and then they had a IV hooked up to me, and I can feel the coldness of the fluid going up my arm. Okay, and again, that tells you you have thermal receptors, not just on the outside, but on the inside as well. Next, we have these nociceptors. Nociceptors is a fancy word for pain receptor. Okay, so there are two kinds of nociceptors. We have the somatic nociceptors, and then we have the visceral nociceptors. Generally, somatic nociceptors relay pain that originates from the outside of the body. These are body parts that you normally have voluntary control. Okay, so like cutting your skin, hurting your muscle, that's gonna be picked up by somatic nociceptors. So respond to mechanical damage. Mechanical is like literally like a cut by a knife, for example, if you're cutting your food. Thermal, so like a burn. Electrical, chemical, spill chemicals on your skin. The bleach on your skin can eat through and hurt you. That's chemical damage. And all these are going to be detected by somatic nociceptors, generally from the surface of the body. Visceral nociceptors are going to detect damages that originates from inside of the body, internal organs. So excessive stretching of an internal organ. When would you have excessive stretching? Maybe you ate too much, okay, and now it hurts. Okay? Maybe there is kidney stone that gets stuck in one of your ureters. Okay? The tubes that where the urine passes through. Maybe a stone gets stuck in it and it stretches it and it hurts a lot. That's going to be picked up by visceral nociceptor. Oxygen deprivation, when oxygen supply is reduced. Okay? When part of the body is not getting enough oxygen, it releases these chemicals, okay? And that's going to cause the visceral nociceptors to register it as pain. Chemical released by damaged tissue as well. Okay, so surface of the body, somatic. Inside of the body, visceral. But there is something called refer pain. Okay, refer pain. Let me just try to illustrate this with a picture. Lecture 7. Gotta delete all this stuff. Okay. So you know, you might have some kind of organ, okay, like the heart or something. And if there is some kind of damage to it because of oxygen deprivation, maybe there's coronary arteries being blocked or something, person is having angina, okay, or like a heart attack, right? So there's going to be a sensory neuron that goes up to the brain, and this is going to be a visceral nociceptor that's picking it up, okay. And then you might have another body parts here, okay, another body parts like the shoulder, okay, the right shoulder, I think. Is it the right shoulder or the left shoulder? I can never remember. It's the left shoulder, sorry. Left shoulder. Okay. In an unrelated event, okay, like you bump your left shoulder, okay, like you know, you hit something and then you scrape it or something, you fell off the bike, okay, that's gonna, this is the shoulder, by the way. I know it just looks like a line, but it's a shoulder, okay. Okay, and then you're gonna have a somatic nociceptor, and then it's gonna, you know, go into the spinal cord. It's gonna go up to the brain as well. Okay, so that is somatic. Okay, so what happens is a lot of times the visceral pathway that goes up in the ascending tract and the somatic pathway that also goes up in the ascending tract, they merge together and become one tract. Okay, and then they go up to the brain, and then they would hit the same part of the brain. Okay, they would map to the same region of the brain. Okay, and so what happens is sometimes your brain would interpret a visceral pain as if it originates from a somatic source. Okay? Because you're more familiar with somatic pain. So even though the source of the pain comes from like an internal organ, but because the pathway merges with another one that's coming from the surface of the body, your brain interprets it as if it is coming from the surface, because again, you are more familiar with that kind of pain. So this concept is called referred pain. Okay, referred pain. So there are a lot of different pathway that converges. For example, liver gallbladder. If you have pain that originates from there, it's often felt on the right shoulder here. Okay, you might have heard that the people who are having heart attack, you start to have the discomfort, the pain that that it's delocalized on the left shoulder area here, right? That's another example of refer pain. More common example that we might have had experience of would be like in men, for example, like if you play soccer and the ball hits you down there, right? The pain is not actually originating from I mean the pain originates from maybe the testicles, okay? But then you don't really feel it coming from the testicle. You feel it kind of in the abdomen area, right? So that's refer pain. Same thing for female, right? Menstrual pain, I was told that it's general discomfort in the abdomen area, even though the actual shedding of the endometrium, right, that happens within the lining of the uterus, right? So that's another example of refer pain. The whole concept is the source of the discomfort of the pain is misinterpreted by the brain as if it's coming from another region of the brain, of the body. Okay, and the reason is because of the convergence of this path that's going up in the ascending track. Yeah, so that's refer pain. There is okay, so there's a question: can kidney stones and back pain be part of this? Yeah, I mean, like I don't have the kidneys mapped here, but if you look it up, right, okay, you can see where kidney maps to, right? But then again, the kidneys is pretty like if I have to show the location of a kidney, it's actually exactly at the back, right, at the lower back, right? So it might not be refer pain necessarily. It might just be actually coming from the kidney. I don't really know. I haven't really memorized or studied which organ maps to which part of the body. But you know what? Acupuncture is actually based on this principle. Okay. Stimulating certain parts of the body on the surface, right, would have a therapeutic outcome for certain internal organs. At least that's how the theory goes, right? It's actually based on this concept of refer pain. Pancreas goes to the back. Yeah, is it? I have no idea. But again, something that you probably can look up. Great questions, though. Great questions. There's something called congenital. Congenital means you're born with it. Congenital insensitivity to pain, or CIP. Okay, it's so rare that there has only been 20 cases being reported in the scientific literature. Okay, at least only 20 cases when I make this PowerPoint, I don't know, 5-6 years ago. Maybe there are more cases now. I don't know. But you can search this up on YouTube and then you can see some clips about it. But basically, a person cannot feel pain. Okay, you probably might have seen it in movies. I remember seeing like some, it's a common thing to put in movies and TV shows. I've seen this couple times at least on TV, where someone cannot feel pain. Now, initially, you might think, hey, that's pretty good to not be able to feel pain, right? Painless life. But actually, it's not good. Pain is a protective mechanism for us, right? It tells you something's wrong with the body and you should get it looked at. Okay. So there was this clip that, was interviewing the parents of this kid who has the condition. And she would fell off the bike and got hurt. But then she would just get right back up and continue to ride, even though, her legs are bleeding, okay, because she didn't feel the pain, right? There was no sense of urgency to stop, okay? And then the kid could end up hurting themselves more, right? Imagine falling and then breaking your arm and not knowing about it because you don't feel any pain, right? So your body sustaining all these injuries without you knowing about it. And if something's wrong on the inside, you wouldn't necessarily feel the pain as well. and then you wouldn't bother to go and see the doctor about it, right? So pain is actually important. But of course, pain is part of suffering, and if someone is in chronic pain, then there are all these medications that is available for pain management. Sorry, I went on a tangent. But we were talking about different kind of receptors, right? There are the mechanoreceptors for pressure and body movement. There are the thermoreceptors for temperature. And then we talk about somatic and visceral nociceptors. And now there are two more. We have the chemoreceptors, which are responsible for detecting changes in particular chemical concentration. So like we have taste buds in the tongue, right? Which helps detect the different tastes. We're going to talk more about that later. Okay, so detecting sodium, Na+, right? That would trigger the sensation of saltiness. That's one example. We have olfactory receptors in the nose that helps us, pick up all these different aroma. Right? Something smells like fresh. Something smells, like gross, okay, like garbage, dirty socks, right? All these smells require some kind of olfactory receptor in the nose. Other chemical receptors can detect things like oxygen. I don't know if you remember, but we have a carotid body that is in our carotid artery for detecting blood oxygen level, and it communicates with the respiratory center in the medulla oblongata for regulating breathing. We detect carbon dioxide in the respiratory center, in the medulla oblongata. And we have receptors that detects H+ in the blood for regulating pH, for example. Right, so all these are chemoreceptors. Photoreceptors are only located in the eye. I told you we have the cones and the rods. More on that later, and it's stimulated by light energy. Okay. Animals that have a very thin skin, okay, and the skull is very thin as well. They also have photoreceptor in the pineal gland. Remember, pineal gland secretes the melatonin, right? Okay, so our head is pretty much like opaque, right? No light is able to go through. But like think of like a frog or something, right? The light will be able to penetrate their skin and their skull, and actually stimulate their pineal gland. They have photoreceptors there, and that helps them regulate their hibernation cycle. Okay? So sometimes the pineal gland is called a third eye because it has photoreceptors on them. Not ours though. Okay, ours is not related. Okay, which of the following receptors respond to changes in pressure? All right, go for it. What do you think? Good. That would be the mechanoreceptors. Okay, nociceptor is for pain. So if the pressure is so great that it started to damage you, okay, like imagine poking you gently with a thumbtack. Okay, at the beginning is just the mechanoreceptor, but if the thumbtack goes through, then the nociceptor is gonna take over, right? Okay, but like non-damaging pressure, that's gonna be mechanoreceptor. Okay, let's try this one. This is a multi-select question, so select all the correct answers. Okay, cutting a finger, that would be somatic. Angina would be, coming from within, so that's visceral. So B is correct answer. Kidney stone blocking a urethra, that's also the correct answer. Bruise from falling is somatic. dislocated shoulder is also somatic. Okay, shoulder is kind of on the surface, right? Like in general, if it's not like an internal organ, it's safe to say that it is somatic. Okay? If it's not an internal organ, it's most likely somatic. Okay, moving on. Taste and smell. Taste. Sensory receptors for taste. Sensory receptors for the sense of taste. Okay, so for taste are in taste buds. Okay, so where do we find the taste bud? I'll show you on a picture. It's much easier. So there is your. Do I have? There we go. Okay, I'm just gonna show you an actual picture. This is the surface of the tongue. Okay, this is the surface. Surface. That's where the food goes. Okay, and if you zoom in, like if you take a slice of tongue, and this would be like a sagittal cut of the tongue. Okay, so cutting your tongue like this, like stick your tongue out like that, and then you cut it like that, and you create a thin slice, and you put it on a microscope slide. It will look like this. Okay, some of you who were in my class last semester, I showed you, for some groups anyways, I show you a slide of the tongue, right? So that would be the surface, and this here is called a papilla. A papilla is kind of like a cylindrical projection of any sort in the body. Okay, like a little knob, you can think of it. We have other locations with papilla, but this is a papilla in the tongue, and on the side of the tongue, that's the taste bud. That's a taste bud. There, taste bud, taste bud, taste bud, taste bud. Okay, so take a look here. Can you see the taste bud? Okay, taste bud, taste bud, taste bud. This one's not really clear, but probably another taste bud here, right? More taste bud. You see them, right? Like little oval stuff, right? So the taste buds are located on the side of the papilla. So when you eat the food, right? Like, you know, if you have some sodium or something, sodium's gonna sneak in beside here, between the gaps, and then it's gonna trigger some of the taste buds. Okay, so those are responsible for taste. Okay, taste buds are embedded in the epithelium, outermost surface, right? Primarily on the tongue. May lie along the walls of the papillae. Papillae is the plural for papilla. You just add an E. Remember, like vena cava. There are also some scattered, isolated taste buds that are on the hard palate, that is on the roof of your mouth, in the pharynx and at the epiglottis. You know, sometimes you ate something really gross, like a disgusting kind of dish or something. Okay, it's maybe something you made, maybe something you bought, I don't know. Okay, but you would have that like taste that lingers in your throat, right? It's particularly true for like bitter stuff. Okay, sometimes you swallow something bitter and it just you got this bitter feeling lingering in your throat, right? So it's not really your throat. Well, I mean, it is your throat, right? Part of your throat is the pharynx, right? Remember? Okay, and the fact that you can feel that taste, aftertaste that lingers in your throat, tells you you have taste bud there as well. Okay, I have a private message. When you stick your tongue and the little dots you see on those taste buds. Oh yeah, no. Those little dots are the top of the papilla. Okay, so like this thing here. This thing, when you view it from above, it's like this whole thing is like a cylindrical shape. Okay, cylindrical shape like that. Okay, so like those little dots that you see on the surface. Okay, it's basically a bunch of those things together, and the taste buds are actually like here in between the sides of those cylinder. Good question. Because people say like you brush your tongue, right? So you clean the surface, and you know, you will be more sensitive to the taste. Okay, but I don't know. I cannot brush my tongue. Every time I brush my tongue, I gag, and I just don't bother anymore. This is just like a picture, right? To show you. I think like you were talking about like these little dots, right? Okay, so if you zoom in, and again you see the papilla, and then you have the taste bud. There's a little bit of opening that allows things to go in. And don't forget the taste bud is a sensory receptor. It's a chemoreceptor, in fact. And then it's going to transmit the signal, right, through a sensory nerve. So what kind of taste do we have? How many tastes are there that we can detect? Usually people can name 4. So I just want to hear it. Anyone want to tell me?
Sour,
Sour, yeah. What else?
sweet,
Sweet,
salt,
salty, yeah. Sour, sweet, salty. What's another one? Bitter, yeah, bitter. That's right. And one more. Oh yeah. Someone again, part of the message says savory. That's right. So savory one is called umami. Okay, umami, which is again savory. That's umami is it's yummy or delicious in Japanese. So these are the different tastes that we can distinguish. Okay, and it's all written here. Okay, the five tastes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So in order to register these tastes, your chemoreceptors in the taste buds, right, basically have to register different things. So glucose triggers sensation of sweetness. H plus triggers sensation of sourness. Okay? Like if you taste lemon or something. Okay, Na plus would trigger a sensation of saltiness. Okay, and bitter is a range of things. Okay, but sometimes like things that are basic, like opposite of acidic, right? That could trigger some kind of a bitterness sensation. So like, coffee has a bitter taste to it, right? Brussels sprout has a bitter taste to it. Okay, and then the savory is going to trigger the umami feeling. That's actually triggered by the presence of glutamic acid. And so glutamic acid is it's a naturally occurring amino acid that is found in a lot of meat. Okay, and there's artificial flavor, right, called MSG, which you probably know. MSG is monosodium glutamate. It's sort of like the artificial version of glutamic acid, right? And that's known to trigger the umami sensation. Okay, you ever heard or like you probably seen a picture of like a tongue, and then the different regions is zoned out, right? Like the tip is for like sweetness or something, and then the side is for sour. You guys have seen pictures like that, right? I'm sure. That actually turns out to be wrong. Recently, they found out that it's not mapped that way. Okay, your entire tongue has the ability to detect all the tastes. Okay, so the tip is it's not only for sweetness. You can detect sourness and saltiness as well with the tip of your tongue. But maybe some parts are more sensitive to some tastes compared to the others. So that's something to keep in mind. Spiciness is not a taste. Okay? Spiciness is a sensation. And interestingly, astronauts, they lose a lot of their taste in space. Nobody really knows why. Okay, like they don't, the food tastes bland. And so astronauts, they say they bring like hot sauces with them to space to kind of spicing up their food, right? So it tastes like something. Right? So for some reason, nobody knows why it doesn't work. Is taste seventh nerve facial? You mean the cranial nerve? Which cranial nerve is responsible for taste, Brill? Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna tell you honestly, I don't remember, but we can Google that and probably find out. But you're right in the sense that there is one cranial nerve that is dedicated for taste. Okay, so finally, right, that thing I keep on telling you about, right? Like if you pry open the frontal lobe and then the temporal lobe, hidden behind is the insula. Okay, the insula is responsible for taste. Now, actually, you know, it's too much work for me to find the picture for you. But if you look up primary motor cortex, like at the bottom here, you know, I keep on saying, right, like face and hand, right? I keep on writing that. At the bottom here, you will find tongue. Okay, you will find tongue. Okay, so your tongue is not only for detecting taste, right? Okay, so the information pertaining to taste is gonna go to the insula, but your tongue can feel like other things, right? Feel like temperature, right? Are you drinking hot coffee? Are you drinking cold iced tea? That's temperature, and that's gonna go to the primary somatosensory cortex, right? When you chew food, you move your tongue so that the tongue can, you know, put the food at the right place for you to chew, right? If you get something stuck in your teeth, you can move your tongue to try to get it out. That's voluntary movement. So that originates from the primary somatosensory cortex, right? The texture of your food. Does it feel mushy? Is there some like bones in your food that's sharp and it's poking at your tongue and it hurts, right? That would be primary somatosensory cortex. Okay, so not only does the tongue gives you gustatory information, which again goes to the insula, but the tongue also is responsible for somatosensory information as well. Okay, so that's why it's partly in the sorry, the gustatory region is partly in the insular lobe and partly in the parietal lobe right here, right, for the taste. Okay, and the frontal lobe is only for you know, controlling the movement of your tongue, right? Okay. Tongue is actually very important. We don't really think much about it, but if you ever bit your tongue and you know, you damage part of it, then you would know how important the tongue is, right? Because now moving it, doing certain things that you normally take a granted for, it's now gonna hurt, right? So that is that. I thought I had a slide for, oh, hold on. Did I open the wrong? Hold on a second. Is this the right PowerPoint? Oh, never mind. I got confused. There was sorry, what's
did you just say the spicy is not the taste?
yeah, spicy is not a taste, it's a sensation. Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, it's like a feeling, okay? Sorry, I got confused because I have a bunch of slides that talks about spiciness, like with the you know, the different peppers. People like to eat peppers contests sometimes, right? They try very spicy peppers. I have a slide on that, but that's for the digestive system. It's gonna come later. Okay, that's why I got a little bit confused. Anyway, that's it for taste for now. Let's move on to smell. Smell. So we have these olfactory cells with odor receptors in them that are located at the roof of your nasal cavity, and the olfactory receptors usually is gonna get triggered as a group. Okay, so the odor, the smell, the molecules that are responsible for aroma, for smell, they will trigger a whole group of these sensory receptors, of all these odor receptors. Okay, rather than one particular receptors. If we think about it, you know, how many different kind of smell are there in this world, right? Like so many, right? Like, you know, the smell of laundry, the smell of, you know, ice cream, the smell of tuna fish, the smell of garbage, smell of skunk. There's so many smell. It's impossible for you to have a dedicated a receptor for each of these smell, right? You literally will run out of space in the nasal cavity, right? If you have one receptor for each smell. So rather than relying on that, having one receptor for each smell, you would have a group of them so that when a particular odor is present, it will create what we call like an odor signature, okay? And then your temporal lobe would interpret that signature as a particular smell. So let me give you an example. Okay, so here we have 3 types of receptors. Okay, we will use color to represent them so that it's easier for us to visualize. Okay, so let's say there is one that detects green odor molecules, and then one that detects blue, and then one that detects yellow. Okay, so a combination of green and blue, your body, your temporal lobe will register that as, oh, the smell of rose. Okay, and with just 3 receptors, how many different odor do you think you can potentially code with just 3 receptors? Okay. So like green and blue can represent one smell. So think about other combinations that you can get. How many different combinations can you get with just 3 receptors? Okay, so let's think about it, right? We can have blue and green that could represent rose. Okay, you can have green and yellow that could represent, I don't know, tulip or something. You can have blue and yellow that represent the smell of laundry. Okay, you can have all 3, and that could represent the smell of green tea. Okay, you can have just yellow by itself, green by itself, or blue by itself, right? Those could represent individual smell, right? So with just 3 receptors, you can map up to 7. Well, technically you can map up to 8, okay? A different smell, right? Because no smell can, like if they're all like off, then that's odorless. So that could trigger like total of 8 different smell, right? So if you imagine you have a bunch of these receptors, let's say you have 20 of them, okay, 20 receptors, then you can register up to 2 to the exponent 20 different kind of smell, right? And every time you have an odor, it causes a combination of these things to light up, okay? And that creates a barcode that you interpret as smell. There's something called specific anosmia, which is the inability to pick up a certain smell, certain scent, okay? And an example of that would be a skunk. Some people cannot smell skunk, right? They lack the receptor for that. And you know, that's probably a good thing to have. And for those of the rest of us who do not have that ability, if you do get sprayed by a skunk, it's recommended that you bathe yourself with tomato juice, because tomato contains an enzyme that will break down the molecule that creates the unpleasant smell associated with the spray. Okay, gustatory region is found in the, let's try that. Okay, those who participated got it right. That is the insula as well as the parietal lobe. Olfactory information, I'll do this one for you. It goes to the temporal lobe. And remember, olfactory, smell information will bypass the thalamus. It's the only sensory input that does not go through the thalamus. It goes directly to the temporal lobe. Okay, vision. So this is the key part of the lecture now, okay? Vision. So accessory organs of the eyes. The eye is just like the eyeball itself, but then there are other stuff that are kind of there and it's kind of important. So eyebrows, one of those things that we don't think much about. Okay, it's like things that, you know, it's weird not to have, but you're not sure why they're there. So eyebrows actually shade the eyes from sun and protects the eyes from perspiration and debris. Okay, if you are sweating in a hot summer day, right, you will notice the sweat comes down from your forehead, and when it hits your eyebrow, it just kind of goes to the side, right? So it doesn't go directly into your eye and irritate the eye, right? So that's one function of the eyebrow. But the eyebrow actually helps shades the eye from the sun as well. You know, that's why like football players, you see them like have those face paint. That is sort of functioning like the eyebrows, right? It helps reduce the glare from the lights that are in the stadium. Okay, so allows them to see better. Eyelids are also very important. It helps you to lubricate the eye. Every time you blink, it you know, creates like a new layer of tears that would coat your eyeball so it doesn't get dry. And of course, we sleep with our eyelid closed. Eyelashes can block debris from entering the eyes as well. So these are just some, you know, basic stuff that are there in addition to the eye that keeps the eye healthy and protect them. Okay, we are going to label the eyeball right now, and then I think that's going to be the last thing we do for today. I don't know. It has been a long lesson. So let's go find the eyeball, which is right here. I'll give you a moment to do that, to find the eyeball, and we will label it. So your eye actually has 3 layers to it. You know, there's 3 layers to the eye, and we will try to color each one of them here. So we have the outermost layer, which is the one I am coloring right now. And again, it's really hard for me to color on the computer. So hopefully you will be able to do a better job than me. That is the outermost layer. That is the white of the eye. We call that the sclera. The white of the eye. When you see somebody's eye, you see the white part? That's the sclera. Okay, you can see a little bit of a blood vessels in the white sometimes, but the blood vessels are actually not in the sclera. The blood vessels is on the layer that's beneath the sclera. Okay, so that's the second layer right here. And it's this thin one. Okay, so that second layer is called a choroid. It's the same word as the choroid plexus. And remember, choroid just means is a vascularized layer, right? So contains blood vessels that will help nourish the eyeballs. Eyeballs are alive. They need the cells there. They need nutrients. So that's the choroid. At the front of the eye, the sclera becomes transparent, and it forms this convex structure. Convex means it bulges out. And that is the cornea. Cornea. So the convex shape allows it to collect light from a wide angle. Think of it as the security mirror in the corner of a convenience store, right? Those are convex mirror, allows a good view of the entire store, right? So the cornea is the same thing. Now it's not very clear for people sometimes, but over here, this is the eyelid, Okay, and it's currently closed. That's the eyelid, and these are the eyelashes. This is the lower eyelid, which we don't move. It's only the top one that we're able to control. Okay. So sclera, outermost layer. Beneath it, we have the choroid, and beneath that, beneath the choroid, we have a third layer. It's really hard to see on my diagram, but hopefully it's clearer on yours. That's a third layer. And of course, the eyeball has been cut open here, right, to review the different layer. That is the retina. Retina, let's see. Okay, I know it seems like it's pronounced retina, but it's retina. Okay, so this contains photoreceptors. So there are the rods, and then there are the cones. And if you want to know now, cone is responsible for color vision. So there are cones that detects red, blue, and green. Okay. Rods are for night vision. Okay. We'll learn more about that later. Okay, so that's that. Now, at the back of the eyeball, okay, on the retina, there is a special spot. Okay, so this special spot is called the fovea. Fovea. And it has highest density of cone cells. And that creates the sharpest image. Whenever you're focusing on right now, right, that object is projected onto the fovea. Next, we have this thing, which is the optic nerve. So each eyeball has its own optic nerve, right optic nerve and left optic nerve. Okay. I don't know if you remember this, but last lecture, we label something called the optic chiasma. I'm just gonna show you if I can find it. It's right here in this diagram. Okay, A over here, right? There's a little spot here that's right in front of the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland. That's called the optic chiasma. So the optic nerve from the right eye and the optic nerve from the left eye will come together at the middle where it will cross each other. That is the optic chiasma. Don't worry if you don't fully understand what I'm talking about. I will explain further later on. Okay, so this goes to optic chiasma. Where the optic nerve is coming out of the eyeball, like this location here, you will not have any photoreceptor because the nerves are in the way, right? So that is what we call the blind spot. The blind spot, also known as the optic disc. Okay, no photoreceptor there. You can't see anything at that spot. Fortunately, the blind spot of the right eye is compensated by the left eye, and vice versa. So if both of your eyes are open, you have no blind spot. Okay, it's only when you close one eye, then there's going to be a blind spot, and we'll try to find your blind spot in next class. Okay. There is another thing here at the front. That's lens, the lens of your eye. And the lens is a converging lens. I'll explain what that means next time. Okay, basically causes light rays to focus on one point. Other examples of converging lens in real life would be like a magnifying glass. Okay, if you put light rays through a magnifying glass, it focuses on one point, right? Like as a kid, you might try to burn things with the magnifying glass, right? So our lens is like that. It focuses light ray, and so when the light ray, don't draw this in a diagram, it might ruin it, but the light ray comes in, it will bend it and focus it on the fovea. Right? Light ray comes in, bends it and focus it on the fovea. Okay, and that's gonna produce a sharp image of whatever you're looking at. Okay, there are a few other things here. And like I said, like multiple times already, we will go into greater details about all these things next class. And I just want to label it for you first so that you have an idea of what's going on. So around the lens are going to be these ligaments. Okay, this is across like a sagittal section of the eye, right? But if you look at the lens from the front, right, this is the lens. Then you would have all these ligaments that are going out of it in all sides. Okay. So these ligaments, which is what N is pointing at, that would be the suspensory ligament. Okay. And then connect. So one end of the suspensory ligament is connected to the lens. The other end of the suspensory ligament will be connected to muscle. So if I look at it from the front, then there is going to be a ring of muscle that goes around it on the outside. You can't really see it very clearly here, but that's the muscle, and then you have the muscle here at the bottom, and that's what B is pointing at. Okay, it's called the ciliary muscle. Okay, sometimes you read it might call ciliary body. For us, it's the same thing. It doesn't really matter. Long story short, the ciliary muscle will contract or relax, which then would cause the suspensory ligaments to be tighter or become more loose, which in turns would change the thickness of the lens. Okay, so one more time, just in case you missed it. When the ciliary muscle contract or relax, it will cause the tension, the tightness in the suspensory ligament to change, which then will cause the lens to become thicker or thinner. Okay, we'll explain exactly how that happens next time. But you want to change the thickness of the lens as you shift your focus. If you look away, if you look at something far away, then the lens needs to be thinner. If you're reading a book, something close by, then the lens needs to be thicker. Okay? That's controlled by these two things working together. What else do we have here? Okay, so the lens actually divides the eye into the front part and then the back part. Okay, and over here, the back chamber, we call it like the posterior cavity. Okay, posterior cavity. And over here, it's just the same thing, right? Like the lens here separates the front and the back. So P is posterior cavity. And you probably guess what the front is, right? The front is anterior cavity. And again, this is the lens. I'll just color it the same thing so you know it's the lens. The posterior cavity is filled with a gel-like substance. Okay, and in this picture, you know, they took away some of the gel and it just shows you a little bit of it. Okay, so this whole thing is the gel. I'm running out of color. But there we go. This is the gel. And it's supposed to fill up the whole posterior cavity, okay? Fills up the whole back portion of the eye. This is called the vitreous humor. And the function of the vitreous humor is to reinforce the shape of the eyeball. Okay? You don't want the eyeball to collapse on its own, right? Okay? You want it to stay nice and round. And that's what the vitreous humor is for. The front here, the anterior cavity, is filled with another fluid. It's very similar in composition. Just gonna use green here again. That is called the aqueous humor. The funny water, aqueous humor. Okay? So aqueous humor will nourish the cornea and the lens. Because the cornea and the lens is transparent, there are no blood vessels going through them, right? So as a result, they need to have some kind of way to get nutrients, and that's what the aqueous humor is for. All right. We don't have to know this one. And we're almost done. So your eye continuously produce these aqueous humors, and then we need to drain them. Right? So there's a little tiny spot here. You can't really see it, but it's there for draining the aqueous humor. And that is part of the sclera. So we call that scleral. And this is going to be a familiar name, sclerovenous sinus. Okay, drains aqueous humor. If we don't drain them, our eye pressure is going to go up, and that's going to be problematic. We'll talk about that next time. Okay, one more. Over here, this is pointing at the color part of the eye. I'll give this person a brown eye. And of course, there are different eye color, blue eyes, hazel eyes, green eyes. And some people even have different eye color for each eye. That's a real thing. And the color part of the eye is called the iris. Okay. The eye color is usually matched with your skin color as well as your hair color because it's the same pigment, right? The melanin that determines all that. And iris is not just to make your eyes look pretty, okay? Iris also controls the size of the pupil, which is kind of missing here, but there's a hole right here, and that's the pupil. Okay, we need the pupil to allow the light to go into the eye, right? We need more light to come in when it's dark, and we need less light when it's bright. And that is regulated by the iris. And you might remember your parasympathetic system and the sympathetic system is the ones that are responsible for regulating the iris. Okay. When you are in danger, the sympathetic system is going to cause the iris to dilate the pupil. And when you're calm and relaxed, then the parasympathetic system will cause the iris to constrict the pupil. Okay. So there you have it. Beautiful eyeball right here, and all the parts, and just very basic information on what they do. We will finish. I think we will finish lecture 7 for sure next class. So we're right on schedule. Not to worry about that. Thank you for coming. See you all on Wednesday. Have a good day. Bye-bye.